and welcome to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Batts, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender is Kate Kronquist. Kate, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, Alex. Thank you. So today we are going to be diving into the entirety of the live action series that dropped on Netflix last Thursday. And while today's episode is going to talk about the season as a whole, expect us to dive into a lot more details about each episode as we start our rewatch of the animated series next week. Alex, I know you are itching to dive in, so let's get started.
Yeah, there's a lot to dive into here, a lot to get into. So I'm excited. As Kate said, Netflix this past Thursday released their highly anticipated live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender from showrunner Albert Kim. This series takes the original 22-minute episodes from season 1 and condenses them down into 8 approximately 1 hour episodes for close to the same runtime. The series originally had the Avatar creators Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko attached as showrunners, but as we discussed in episode 0, they left due to creative differences. Kate, I want to start with you and discuss some of your overall thoughts on this first season and the series adaptation as a whole. So what did you think?
Yeah. So as a whole, I really appreciated all the hard work, all this cast and crew they put into trying to pay homage to this classic, obviously. But the effort is definitely not lost on me. They hired designers from real Inuit tribes to create waterbender costumes. They had indigenous elders to consult with. Their music was sourced from abroad instead of LA. The composer, Takashi Furukawa, I think, yeah. He composed it, and he said it was really important to me that we got to go to people who breathe the air and drink the water of that area. And, I really got to give it to them. They really did their best. They did their research, and I appreciated that. I definitely saw that. That wasn't lost on me. What I was really upset about, and what I think everybody's really upset about, is that was kind of overshadowed by a misunderstanding, I think, in the writing room.
Yeah.
And the narrative, we kind of lost the narrative along the way, hence bending the narrative. So I loved, and what I think we all loved about the original show was these complex characters that each got to go through a full arc. The creative writing with the genius problem solving, that all makes sense with little to no plot holes, and their ability to convey this complex message in such a simple way. I mean, the show literally explains the horrors of war to children. And in this live action translation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they almost, I feel like they forgo the arcs almost completely, or they rush them. I feel like I don't notice any of the characters learning, and a lot in the main show, in the original show, what makes it so good and what makes these arcs so good is that we see them learning. We're not told. We're not told through conversation that they learn these things. We see them learning these things. Aang starts off in this show very serious, so we don't get to see him in his struggle to mature and take over this insane task he has to do. Sokka isn't really sexist, so we don't get to see him learn the lesson that women can also be as strong. Katara is very level-headed, so we don't get to see much of her learning moral strength and ferociousness. And a big part I loved about her character was her anger. And that was kind of taken away in this a little bit. I also think that they made Zuko a little bit less interesting by, making him maybe not as passionate with his main motivation, which is, to get his father's approval. I do love Dallas Liu, the actor. He did a great job, though. I did love him. He crushed it. He was a great, I was like, oh, he's a brat. He's a bratty 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this and I was like, oh, imagine taking orders from a 16-year-old. That's got to suck. It really put it in
He really nailed that. I was born as a prince. This is my role.
Oh yeah.
And you could tell that he came from that privilege, which was nice. He definitely nailed that.
He definitely really nailed that. And it was what I do like that they did in this live action is you get to see that more and understand, you really see their age. You really see how young they are. And you really see how grumpy these kids are.
Yeah.
And I loved that. But it's not the actor's fault. I never think it's the actor's fault, but I think
the writing didn't
justify that.
Yeah, the writing didn't give them, I think, the space that they kind of needed to, like you were saying, like grow into the like arcs that we know they're supposed to go on. Like you were saying, I think that the writing in this is, I think, my main like problem with the thing as a whole. And I don't want to just talk about like my dislikes of it, because I did enjoy it, admittedly, more than I thought I was going to.
Way more than I thought. Oh my God.
I went into this and I was very like, I'm not going to have a good time, which I didn't want to go into it thinking that, but I was like, I was just so worried. And so didn't think that it was going to be enjoyable. And it was enjoyable, I think.
Yes.
And I think especially, I saw some people talking about it, and I agree with this. It's so hard to detach it from the animated series and just take it on like its face value. And I think that if the animated series didn't exist and we just had this, it's a solid show, but I do still think that the problems that are there, like, are there regardless of it being an adaptation. They just, I think, get exacerbated when you add in the fact that it is an adaptation of something that does those things so exceptionally well in the original format. Like, the biggest problem that I have with this show is that it doesn't seem like it trusts its audience to have intelligence, like emotional or otherwise. It just explains everything to you over and over and over, and like shows you and tells you, as opposed to just like letting you live in it and like understand how the things are going, and then like seeing the characters grow naturally or seeing the arcs kind of happen. Instead of that happening, like you were saying, they just like tell you that the character has grown in this way or has learned this thing, as opposed to like seeing them do that, which I think is it's tough. And it's also a weird feeling, considering by the end of the season, a lot of the things feel rushed, even though this season is technically a longer runtime than like the animated season one is, which is
it's a disservice to the original. It's a disservice to the actors, and it's almost offensive to all the hard work everybody put into making this look as good as it did.
Yeah, because it does look really good. I think some of
given
my
the circumstances.
Qualms, and I think too that like a lot of people have talked about the bending and the bending looking really good, and I think it does for the most part like look great. I also think that some of them, and this is more like technical stuff, like some of the choices for framing and stuff is not the best so far. But like there were other times where I was watching the action where I was like, oh, this is really great actually. Like this flows well, or like feels kind of exciting. And so they did do a good job there, but it really, I think, comes down to the writing being my biggest, like, I'm not sure on some of this. There were liberties that I think they took in the middle with like combining a bunch of episodes.
Yeah.
And like, I liked the changes that they made. I thought that it made sense, like in the vacuum of the story that they were telling there. But then you kind of zoom out and think about it. And because of those changes, you're also sacrificing a lot of the stuff that those changes would have brought further down the line, like with those character arcs. And so it's a kind of like give and take there. And I'm not sure that it's entirely worth it with the way that they plotted everything out and kind of what they decided to like pick and choose. Like there's a lot of things from season 2 that they put into this season 1, which I'm not entirely sure. Like I get like Azula and May and Ty Lee, like they're in this season, which they're not in the animated season 1 at all.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that they're incredibly popular characters. And so it makes sense for an adaptation to want to introduce them immediately, because obviously there's a ton of fans for them. And so that makes sense. But by doing that, you're taking the screen time away from Team Avatar, which you really need in that first season. Like the reason that it feels like Team Avatar and that we're like with them the whole time is because we do spend that entire like 8-hour runtime of season 1 basically just with Team Avatar. And
just learning about them. And
like the showrunners I know talked about wanting to like talked about not having time to do all of those like little side quests and stuff that the team goes on in the middle of the season, which like I get, but also you did have the time. You just chose to give it to
you just chose to give it to these monologues that are unnecessary and almost feel like what I feel happened is their heart was in the right place, but I think the execution and what it felt like was it felt like executives and money got their hands on this and took over it, and greed took over this, and it stained it, and it made it took away that heart, and it took away that true core to it. Like a lot of it felt like I was like, you're shoving so much from season 2 in this. I feel like they're trying to get all of this. Like they're like, oh, we might only have one season, so let's shove as much as we can in this so we can keep everybody interested, and please the fans and do this fan service. And like they'll all know these little characters, but it wasn't necessary. We all liked the original because everything they did, we were like, oh, it's a lesson in story writing. It's literally how to write a story. Like that's one of the best examples. And
they just lose
they're
that
just
here.
they just lose that. They're not focusing on it.
It's one of the things, like I can't count the amount of times in this season that as I was watching and the dialogue was happening, I said the line for what would be the next line of dialogue beforehand. Yes. I was like, oh, well, it's just obvious where they're going with this. Like,
where they're going.
It's the most like basic, like 101, like, oh, I know what response is going to be here, which is not the best feeling. Like it feels kind of cool. And you're like, oh yeah, called it. But that's not, you don't actually want that though, while you're watching the show, right? Like
I want to be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want it to be more like, I want it to be engaging in a different way. I want it to be like emotionally engaging, not like game show engaging where I'm like, oh yeah, I guessed it right. Cool. Like, that's not.
I think I wrote somewhere here. This is what I wrote when I was watching it. I said, it makes me feel like they're treating me like I'm stupid and I won't understand what's going on if I'm not spoon fed this information. And then I said, if I wanted to watch something without using my brain, I would watch reality TV.
Yeah. It's like I think a good example of it is the decision to show the genocide of the air nomads, like to open. That
was interesting. I did like that.
The show, like I thought, again, it was a cool sequence. I thought it made sense how they like had all the air nomads in one spot to like gather for the Comet Festival. I thought that was cool. And like, again, it makes sense in the context of the show and the story and what they decided to do for the adaptation. But then when you zoom out and look at it, like that's the first 30 minutes of the show. Like they spent 30 minutes there. And that's the first episode of the animated show where we're getting introduced to, you know, Sokka and Katara and Aang and like learning how they are, like who they are as characters. And like we get so much of what will then inform their arcs for the entire show from that first 30 minutes. And you just don't really get that. Like you get some of it with Aang, of course, because he's present. But it's one of those things, again, where in the animated show, it just starts you out not at like chronologically the beginning of the story, but like where you need to be for the beginning of the story, and then it trusts the audience that we'll get to that point. Like we will get to the point where you'll figure out what happened and you'll get the information that you need there, as opposed to like upfront being like, hey, here's everything that's
here's
going
the
down.
Whole timeline.
Yeah, like here's what you need to know.
Like that's not interesting.
Yeah, and it just does that for like all of the main points, basically. It's like, oh, hey, just in case you didn't know, this is what's happening, and here's this character explaining it.
There's literally one line in the finale where Zhao goes to Zuko. He just straight up is like, telling Zuko about, Ozai was using, this is the exact line, Ozai was using you as motivation for your sister. You could show us that.
Yeah, and the thing is that they like
show don't tell.
They did show us that already too. Like that whole dialogue was funny to me, and I know we'll get into the finale.
We'll get into the finale.
But like, they did that at the ends of episode 5 and 6 too. Like both of those episodes, and I took notes specifically about it because like both of those episodes ended with voiceover monologues that were just telling you the themes of the episode, and it's like, I know that. I just watched it. like
literally, I was like, I just saw you do it. What?
You don't have to over explain all of this stuff. Like, trust your audience a little bit, please. Like, it clearly worked with the animated kids cartoon in 2005 on Nickelodeon.
And that's for kids.
Yeah. And that's why I think that it works so well in the animated shows, because it's treating kids like they're not dumb. It's like, well, you can show them stuff in like even if they don't necessarily, or if they won't necessarily have all of the words to put the things together, maybe like they're smart enough to know what's happening.
Kids know what's going on.
Yeah. And so whenever you're taking that away, it feels bad. And it feels especially worse whenever, you know, a lot of the people who are watching it are like kids that grew up on the show. So they're adults now. And so it's like, you really don't need to be doing this level of like hand holding through the whole thing. Like it just... it was a choice, I guess. And then one of the other things that I thought was interesting that they kind of did away with, which for me was like one of my, I'm not like a huge like comedy fan, I guess, in like shows a
Yeah.
lot of the time, but like the animated series is genuinely hilarious a lot of the time.
It's there's some parts where I'm like, wait, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and they just like kind of completely took that out of this show. Like it's just not there. And
there was like a bit with soldiers in the beginning, and they were talking about, they're like, oh, gotta work with like Prince Zuko.
Mm-hmm.
They got like that's funny, but
some of those were good. And I think part of it is that you lose a lot of the visual comedy that you can only kind of get with animation because of like the wacky character expressions and things like that. But they didn't really even try, it felt like. And another thing, and you mentioned this earlier with Aang in particular, a big part of his journey is that he's a huge goofball at the beginning of the show. And like you do get moments of him being kind of like goofy and not wanting to take things too seriously, but also he almost pretty much instantly is like, I have a huge responsibility. I feel bad about this and I need to make amends for this. I need to make this better, which is a great thing and a very important thing for his character to learn. But we don't really get that contrast in this because he just kind of, he gets there almost immediately. Like he pretty much immediately feels that guilt, which, you know, is fine, I guess. I just like, I don't know. And I also thought, and this is not the actors' faults, I think the actors did really well, especially with what they have. Yeah. But a lot of it just came off like really kind of wooden and not like, I don't know. It just, the lines were not there for them. I was like, oh, this is not hitting. Yeah, they weren't like it should be.
The actors did their best with what they had. But I don't think it's their fault. They weren't supported, I feel.
Yeah.
And also something I talked about too that really irked me is everybody talked the same. There's something that they lost in the original show. I know with Iroh. I love Iroh. Usually when he talks, he uses these metaphors or these allegories when he talks to Zuko. Like he'll say something not somewhere, but he always talks in this fun little mystical way, and that gives you a hint into his character, you know, and that helps you lean into how mystical he is and how wise he is, and with that little tidbit, and that's completely lost. I don't think he, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he uses like any metaphors or any allegories, but every single character talks in the same way, in the same cadence.
Yeah, they're all very line. It's very like one note, for lack of a better, like it's just it's a very similar thing for all of them. And then when you combine that with the very samey feeling dialogue that they all have too, it's like you're just watching a repeat of a repeat going through.
Of a repeat, yeah.
Okay, I mean, sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there. Like I said at the beginning, though, I did enjoy this season, I think, a lot more than was anticipated.
Than I thought I would.
Yeah, and there are it's not bad by any means, I don't think. Like it definitely is not even close to like the worst. Like I've seen some people describing it as like worse than the 2010 movie, which like I can't imagine that is the case.
Like calm down. Let's calm down now. Let's I get it. There. It's not the original. It's not going to be the original.
Yeah.
I think the service that this provides is, I think it's a way to get a Western audience maybe into the animation. It's a way to be like, hey, this is a viable medium. See how the story is so cool. But I think a big thing about a Western audience is that they look down on it. They call it cartoons. They won't watch it otherwise. And maybe seeing these live actions, they're like, oh, maybe this story is actually really good and not just for kids and it's a cartoon.
Yeah, and I think it's nice that it feels like we're kind of moving away from that some, which is good. That like more and more people are like, oh no, the animation rocks actually, because it does.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's obvious. I don't remember. I saw some numbers about it recently, but I know this was like #1 in like 73 countries or something, like over the weekend, which is not surprising at all. I'm sure that literally everyone was watching it, which is good. And so like we'll just get more fans of the series in the world, which is exciting and, you know, a great thing to see. I just hope that they really up it for the next season and, you know, it's able to like fix some of the writing stuff, which again, though, is going to be interesting because of the way they decided to pull things from book 2 and put them in here, and how they decided to like mix and match with the arcs and all of that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of the things though that I did think were really great. I loved Boomy a lot, actually.
So I disagree with you.
Yeah, I know. And so that's why I'm excited to get into that specifically, because I think that and this kind of goes back to me not being a huge fan of like goofball comedy type stuff as much.
Okay.
So like I don't really like Boomy that much in the original series. Like he's fun, but I'm like, yeah.
Canceled. Okay. I'm canceling you.
But in this, I really loved the fact that, and at the time in the season 2, like for episodes 3 and 4, he really shows up in 4 more, I think.
Yeah.
They at that point were really hammering home how all of the characters were the way that they were and were jaded or damaged or whatever in different ways because of this war that's been going on for 100 years. And I think that it was a really smart choice to have Boomy. I think this was one of the examples of them. You could kind of read it as them over explaining a little bit, because he does go on a bit of a monologue in the middle of the arena, like, and saying stuff. But I think that one was actually done pretty well, where like, I liked the contrast of him being like, I've had to deal with this war for 100 years and you weren't here. Like you're a kid still and you haven't had to deal with any of this. Like I've had to be dealing with real problems and some very bad problems, and this is hard, bro. And I liked that for him. I thought that was cool. And they had been doing that with a lot of the other characters too. Like Jet is another one where they explore the kind of angles
of
war.
Let's talk about Jet. Let's talk about Jet.
Yeah. So like, he's good. What did you think about Jet? I know you have thoughts.
What's the actor's name? Sebastian Amoruso. My DMs are open. You can hit me up. I'm available, free any day for you, baby. Wow. I loved, that was the perfect actor. He was so good. I don't know if it was the glass of wine I was drinking while watching this, but I was blushing, kicking my feet. I understood Katara in that moment. And I crack up because watching this, I was like, you know what? We all got to get played by the really cute guy. It's just a rite of passage. It's just a rite of passage. He was a great actor. I loved actually what they did with the freedom fighters. I thought they were all perfect casting. It was so adorable. And I wish there was more, but I get it. That was the perfect time. I think they touched on it perfectly. But there was the bit of the Mechanist. I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting way to tie it all in.
Yeah. I liked that plot, actually. I think that the episode 3 and 4, and again, this is something where they combined a lot of stuff, but I really enjoyed that as like an in a vacuum thing. I thought that was a good like storytelling thing with the spy and them dealing with all the stuff in Umashu. I thought that worked really well for those 2 episodes and was cool.
Like that's the lesson of Jet. Not everything is as it seems, and not everything is black and white.
Yeah,
and
which is
that
great. Yeah, but that was cool. But again, another thing that kind of happened though with the show is that they were exploring those themes, and then I feel like they kind of sort of lost focus on that after those 4 episodes.
It was all right there, and then they just dropped it.
Yeah, which is
I think that's the biggest part. Yes.
Yeah, like they were so close a lot of the time. Like the first half of the season, like I thought that the pilot was kind of rough a little bit. It was enjoyable, but it was a little rough around the edges. And then I thought it was like a steady incline through episodes like 2 through 4, and then just kind of dove after there. Yeah, and I was like, you were so close, you had it, and then you just literally lost the plot. Like
the first 4 episodes, I was having a party. I was like, you know what? Is it groundbreaking? Is it cinema? No.
Yeah.
Am I entertained? Yeah.
100%.
I'm entertained.
Yeah, and then the rest of it just started getting like really head scratching, and
like honestly, I was like, I'm bored. Like it's getting. I hate to use that word, but that sounds
It was like I don't know. There's a lot there, but
they tried to make it too Game of Thronesy. I think they try to lean into that. I think they really tried to please that audience or get that audience, and I think that doesn't make sense. That's the biggest mistake, I think.
Yeah, that's not what Avatar was or is or like should be trying to be. It's not you're not going to hit. And also, like, no offense to any other show, but like no other show is going to be Game of Thrones, right?
No other
Like,
show's gonna be Game of Thrones.
And that's a whole other, yeah.
Yeah.
But so you shouldn't try to like shoot for that. You should try to be your thing. And especially when your thing is Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's one of the most, you know, beloved, and everyone is like, oh, this is great. Like, just roll into that, right into that. Like, you got it. It's right there. You have the
and it's like, I think that's when they lost the audience, is when they tried, when you can feel them trying to please a certain type of person, that people can tell it's off-putting. Audiences are smart. They will get it. Trust us.
Yeah.
Stop. If you treat us like we're stupid, then we're going to stop watching.
Yeah.
And
we say as we finish the whole thing.
As we finish the whole thing. As I did watch the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was fun though. I enjoyed it for the most part, but it's you know, there's some stuff there, and I think the decisions for combining things and taking from the later things was maybe it just comes down to that runtime thing where they had it was longer than the animated season 1 was technically.
Like, they elongated a lot of things that did not need to be elongated, and they shortened or walked right over things that I was like, oh, you could have spent more time on that. But a lot of things, these conversations just kept going on and rambling. And I was like, okay, we could have gotten that in like one sentence. I remember I was rewatching the finale, and there's the whole thing when Zuko, what was it? Is it when he kidnaps the Avatar? But there's this whole sequence, explains so much. It happens I timed it in under 30 seconds. And I was like, you could have had that in there. It happens in under 30 seconds. Like, you don't need to make everything this emotional scene. And if every scene is this emotional monologue scene with like these deep conversations, if the whole thing is that, then none of it is.
Yeah, because you lose that
doesn't make anything special.
Yeah, because you're just hitting the same. It's like we were talking about earlier, where it feels like you're hitting the same notes over and over again, as opposed to getting a really like the highs and lows of, you know, the journey that they're going on. And it's also one of those things where I was legitimately, I think they might have mentioned it in like the pilot, maybe, where they mentioned that Aang needs to like learn waterbending, but literally there's 5 minutes left in the finale before I think I want to be like I want to say that I remember them mentioning that like he'll have to learn waterbending in the pilot. I don't even know, can't remember for sure if that's there, but I do know that like 5 minutes left in the finale, they're like, he's like, yeah, I still need to learn waterbending. And dude,
we're like, you're here.
That's supposed to be the whole point of book 1, is him like being like, I need to learn waterbending, and we just don't get any of that.
And he doesn't teaches Katara waterbending. So
yeah,
he's like, there's parts where he's teaching Katara where I'm like, that's not.
Yeah.
The point of their relationship is that she's his master, like she's his waterbending master, like becomes that ultimately, and then
like she also has to learn that, which is a whole other thing where it feels like she just kind of got an instant level up because the show needed her to be able to do combat on that level. And so at one point she's like struggling really hard to do stuff, and in the next second she's throwing ice discs at people.
The ice discs. I was like, where did that come from?
The ice discs are rad, but you know, it happens. I don't know.
It does. It happens to the best of us. It's fun. So this is all great. You know, we made great points. We have many more things to talk about. When we come back, we're going to dive more deeply into comparisons between the animated and live action versions of season 1. And we're going to go to break right now. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to Bending the Narrative. As Alex mentioned at the top of the episode, Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender takes on the difficult task of condensing 20 episodes into 8. While this first live-action season does leave a lot on the table, it also adds some unique narrative choices and characterizations that can be considered improvements from the animated series. Strong words. Alex, let's start with you. Where do you think the Netflix version went right in adapting this series?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think the Boomy, I liked that. And I liked their like kind of emphasis on wanting to explore the fact that the war has affected people in a bunch of different ways. I thought that June also was really great.
Loved the June. That was, she was done well.
Yeah, she showed up and
Arden Cho, you killed it.
Yeah, I'm here for that. She was amazing. I also think one of the coolest additions was the 41st Division for
Yes.
Zuko. Like those being a platoon or battalion that he had like saved essentially, and them not knowing that, I thought was really, really smart and added a lot to the dynamic between Zuko and them throughout the season, because it was really cool seeing, as you were kind of mentioning earlier, like, oh, it's got to suck to get orders from a 16-year-old who's just
16-year-old,
being
yeah.
rude and bossing you around. And you're like, what does this kid even know about anything? And
Yeah.
so I think that the way that they throughout the season kind of hammered home and focused on that, the like dissent among his troops and stuff, and then for us to get the revelation at the end that like they're only alive because of Zuko, and them getting that, I think was really strong.
That was a good addition.
That was super cool. That's the type of stuff that I think you can do with an adaptation, where you can make intelligent changes that are additive, right? That don't subtract away from the original, which I think unfortunately happens with a lot of the changes that they made here, where like you can look at the changes in a vacuum and say, okay, these are good and these make sense for this season. But then when you look at the bigger picture, it kind of loses some of the other stuff there. I think one of the things I liked Sokka a lot, actually. I thought that he was great. He was cool, even though he's still like missing his kind of arc a little bit. They do it sort of, but then it's also kind of confusing. Like I liked how they pretty early on are hammering home the fact that he doesn't need to be what he thought he needed to be in order to be a person, right? Because he's like, I need to be this big warrior and be great at this, and he's kind of learning throughout the season and that's not necessarily the case. He's okay if he just is being himself, and so I think that that's strong. But I think for the most part, the changes just didn't really land or kind of make sense. Like the genocide with the air nomads, I didn't really need to see that, and that took a lot of screen time away. That's 30 minutes. Didn't necessarily need it. Yeah, we could have like focused up. I think for me, the biggest thing that I was not happy with the changes was Azula being in this season. And it's not that I didn't want Azula in this season. I love Azula. I have an Azula poster behind me. And
Elizabeth Yu, great actress. I thought you could tell she was for the original. Like, if she were to play the Azula in the exact way she was in the show, killed it.
Oh, crushed it. You could tell she was giving her all, and it worked really well. Yeah. But I vehemently disagree with the fact that they're showing her crack already. And I've seen a lot of discourse about this online, where people are like, why are Azula fans mad that they're showing that she's the way that she is because of obviously her abusive father and like the manipulation from him? And it's like, yeah, we get that, but the whole point of her arc, and spoilers for the end of season 3 of the animated series, is that she's not supposed to crumble until the very end. Like she's supposed to be so self-assured, and so I'm doing the right thing even though I'm obviously clearly insane and doing the wrong thing. That's not how she feels. And she's not like, she's supposed to be so emotionally stable, like in herself, through the first 2 seasons, and she's not that in this show. She's immediately breaking and showing cracks and showing that she's like, obviously in the animated series she's seeking her father's approval, but she's doing it in a much different demeanor in the animated series than she is in this. Like she's doing it in a very self-assured way in the animated series, and she doesn't feel like that here. Like she's
calm, calculated, cool. She knows that she's a genius. I feel like it, again, I'm going to say it's a disservice to the character. I think it makes her look not as smart, not as conniving, she's these master plans. She is better than the entire Fire Nation armada. Like, she can take on all of them. She shows up these soldiers that are years older than her and have years more experience on her, and she outdoes them all.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe we'll get to see that in season 2, but it's kind of thrown to the side a little bit.
It's cool that we got to see her take over Omashu at the end here. Well, I say see her take over We see that she has taken over Omashu by the end, which is cool, and a good tease for her character going through into season 2. But it's just one of those things where it's like, again, we didn't it didn't feel like she earned that kind of. I know the Netflix show kind of, it seems like her earning that is by way of her using lightning whenever she's like saying no to Ozai when he's like, oh, you need to keep taking out these Earth Kingdom people. And she's like, no, I'm done with this. And like shoots lightning. And the Netflix show acts like it's this huge deal, which like it is a huge deal that she's able to use lightning. But the Netflix show gives you zero context for why that's important at all. Like it just is like, oh, okay. But if you don't know anything, like if you're a new fan, if this is the first time you've watched Avatar, there's nothing to tell you why it's a big, like it looks cool that she's using lightning and you've never seen anyone do it before, but like there's no, it doesn't elaborate on that at all or like give you any like oomph as for why that's a big deal. It's just like, well, you get Ozai smiling and being like, okay, you seem ready now, which is cool, I guess. But
because
like,
you can think like, oh, firebenders can also do that, cool, but like no, that's like only
a very hard thing.
A very selected amount of firebenders can do that.
Yeah, and so it doesn't elaborate on that, which is hilarious considering the rest of the show is very much about like over explaining everything, and then it just doesn't for that, which is really.
And that's one of those things where I'm like, why didn't you elaborate on that? But you elaborate on this thing.
Yeah, it's like, and I think a part of that too is because it happens earlier and not in the same context that it does in the original series. Because when it happens in the original series, Iroh's there the first time she uses lightning. And so then we get him and we get later on where he's talking to Zuko about how, like, why that's a big deal. And that happens like really soon after the fact. Whereas now we have to wait a presumably whole like season. Like we have to wait for season 2 to know why it's a big deal that she used lightning, unless you've seen the animated series, which I feel like is something you should not make your audience do. You should be able to tell the story and have all the
without all of that.
You should have the pertinent information for this version of the story in this version of the story. And it doesn't really do that there, which is something, I guess. And
yeah, because some parts of it, I was like, okay, it felt like they were explaining things in a way like, okay, it's for the audience who hasn't seen this show. But then a lot of parts I'm like, but wait, you would only know this if you've seen the show. So what was the choice here? It's like they couldn't decide on one thing.
And then May and Ty Lee are just there, which granted their job in the animated series is also just to kind of be there for most of the time and just be like, Azula, you're great. But it like really,
they earn their spot.
But you really feel it in this show where it's just like they're just standing around and literally every time we get to them, it's Azula doing something and then being like, oh, Azula, you're the best though. And that is literally it. That is those are their lines in this show, which
feminism out the window,
which it's like I don't even want to know how much runtime actually is Azula, May and Ty Lee doing essentially nothing in this series. And it's like, we could have spent that with Aang and Katara and Sokka and like getting more development.
Why are you forcing it into season 1?
Yeah, which again, I feel like it comes back to they're like, well, we know these characters are super popular, so we need to introduce them earlier. And it's like, okay, but at what cost? Like, I also, I love like I love Azula, and the fact that it takes until season 2 of the animated series to get to her like hurts because she's great and I want to see her more. But it hits so much harder that we don't get her until then, because then we've got all this other time where we've spent with Team Avatar and also Zuko. And so then it's like, oh, okay, here's this new person, and now we're getting to explore them more while we've already got the emotional weight behind our main like Team Avatar people. And we don't really have that here, which hurts. It's not as fun. And then
it could have been great.
Yeah, it could have been so great. I will say though, I loved Iroh and Zuko's relationship in this a lot. And there is one moment, and I think we had talked about this briefly off camera and off mic, and I don't know if you also enjoyed this moment. There's one moment in this season that got me to cry, which I was not expecting at all. It was the funeral.
Leaves from the vine.
Yeah, that scene where Zuko's going, everyone's paying respects to Iroh, and Zuko goes up to him and he says the formal stuff at first, and then goes to walk away. And the second he turns back, I was like, oh no. And he, says the actual, like, what he really feels, and hands Iroh the medal from his son. And like, that got me. That part was really
and
good.
And he killed that performance too. Paul's son, Hyung Lee, right? Yeah, the tear, he was tearing up and trying to keep it.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
And I was like, I could tell he was in that moment. on set. He was killing that.
Yeah,
that was good, but I don't know if I liked the leaves. I loved the version of Leaves from the Vine, though. Music-wise, I loved that version of it. I thought that was beautiful. But again, that's one of those things, we don't know the context of that if you haven't seen the animation. In this version, why is that important? Like, we don't know why the song hits.
Yeah, and it's another
why
thing.
The song hits if you watched the original, but that didn't make sense to me.
We're probably going to not get that in season 2.
Ever.
Because, like, you were probably not going to get Tales from Ba Sing Se. Right. I can't imagine like that's got like when we think about all the episodes that they cut for season 1 because they were side quest type like, stuff.
Let's talk about that too. The episodes that were cut.
Yeah.
And what we wish.
There's a lot.
There was a lot that was cut.
Yeah.
We talked about the deserter being cut, which is very important. The Great Divide.
Yes.
But the fortune teller episode, this goes on a lot about Aang and Katara's relationship and building that up.
We should talk about that because it's not there.
It's not
there at all, which is wild because they end up married with kids.
Of the movie.
Like they are supposed to end up together, and there is zero hints that either of them feel anything towards each other besides like buddy companions.
Did you see somebody say this is literally the Ember Island players? Because at the end she's like, I would never want to be friends with anybody else. And she's like, yeah, best buds. And it hammers that home. And I was like, oh, this is Ember Island players.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And I guess, I don't know if part of it is because it is maybe easier to do that kind of like cute or quirky like crush thing in animation with kids as opposed to like actually kids like on screen. I don't know if that's part of it, but it is something where that's a very pivotal part of the show is the fact that even if Katara doesn't really, reciprocate as much or feel that as much, especially in season 1, but like Aang very obviously has a crush on her from the beginning. And it's a very like clear thing that obviously
first girl he meets.
The first girl he lays on his on. He's like, all right, I'm done.
Such a guy.
Yeah, but it's just not there, which is wild because that's kind of the crux of what, that's how the air nomads continue to exist.
Yes.
Like, and so that just being completely absent, I don't know if they'll want to wrap that around or like make that more of a prominent thing going forward, like in season 2. But that's also where like we lost the moment of them in the tunnels, but that's also one of those things that originally was in season 2 where they're in the caves under
why are we doing it so early?
Yeah, I feel like, and this kind of goes to your point earlier where they're like, well, we know that Secret Tunnels is one of the most famous audio bits of all time from the show, so we need to put that as soon as possible in the show so we can get a bunch of TikToks of it, which like
literally
which is, I understand the thought there from like a exposure and like we want as many people and like the fans are going to lose their mind at this, and which like I was singing along whenever they like got there, and it's great. But also that doesn't happen until like I don't know if it's the middle of season 2 or like how, I can't remember exactly when in season 2 it happens, but it doesn't happen until season 2, and I have like there's no way
off. I like it because it pays off. It's
exactly
worked for,
Yeah, and it's a big emotional moment between Aang and Katara and the tunnels, and like that's one of the coolest moments of the series where the light goes out and you're like, oh, did they kiss me?
Like,
I don't know. Like, oh, that's cute. Like either way, even if they didn't, it's good, and it's got great ambiguity there, and it's a really like, and you feel that because again, you've spent a season and a half with them, and they've also been laying these like the groundwork of their relationship in that kind of way. And instead, in this, we get Sokka and Katara going into the tunnels and dealing with
which
all
I
that
get
stuff.
that kind of worked. I thought that kind of worked for their characters. I can see, but it felt unnecessary because I feel like we had that, and then we had them in the spirit world also going through that. That's a whole thing. The spirit world episode. Also, they called it Spirited Away.
Yeah, which also, okay, man. You're
touching on things you shouldn't be touching on here.
That's a high bar for
it's a high bar.
You to be calling your episode Spirited Away. Like, all right, man.
Like, sit
cool
down.
your I don't even think the original Avatar animated series could get away with that. Like, come on.
Yeah, no.
Chill a little bit.
It's chill.
Yeah, that episode.
That one really lost me.
Wild to me. I did not particularly understand what they were doing with all of that, because it was because the whole thing, especially for that episode in the animated series, is that Aang goes into the spirit world and Sokka and Katara are like, we don't know what's happening with him, but we've got to deal with this stuff out here because this monster is attacking the village still, and we'll like help the villagers how we can, while Aang's doing whatever. And that's not the case in this. And then also, they don't fix the monster in this show.
They don't fix the monster. He's still out there.
To me. Like, it turns into, as opposed to him going into the spirit world to like figure out what's to do with the monster, they get in there and then he's like, oh, I gotta get my friends and these other people out of here. So the monster's fine to keep being a monster though, I guess.
Yeah, like I guess we'll keep terrorizing this little village. That's fine.
Because I guess they didn't have the runtime for it because they needed May and Ty Lee to say how great Azula was all the time. It was a choice. And I will say,
it was things that again could have been explained in like a quick flashback. Sorry, I interrupted you, but
no, I mean, and it could have, and that's one of those things. Like, it's just a weird loose end to leave. To have the spirit monster looked awesome though, I will say. Crushed it. I think the CGI for all of the creatures was really good. There were a couple times where it was like, there was one shot and it was with June whenever she like gets off I forget the name of the animal that she rides. The weird
mole.
The
mole something.
Is it a mole? Because there's the badger moles and those are different.
There's badger moles. Those are different. He has the nose.
Yeah, but anyway, he looked really good. Like his CGI was awesome, but it was super noticeable, the compositing. And one of the things I was like, oh, he's not there. He's definitely not there. Like, it's fine. But I think all of the animals and stuff I thought looked really, really good. The spirit monster looked epic.
But oh my God. The face stealer. I'm going to have nightmares about that. That made me nauseous.
Yeah. Ko was, I will say, like, he was super cool to see.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, weird loose ends where it's like, it would have taken like 30 seconds to a minute for Aang to figure out a solution to this, like to make the spirit monster calm down and be fine. But they just didn't. They chose not to do that, which, okay, I guess. It's a lot of weird characterization things and like loose end things. And then also, I want to get your thoughts on this because I have a lot of thoughts. What do you think about how they handled the past avatars and his interactions with them? Because we got Kyoshi and we got Karuk and we got some Roku, and that's not how it is in season one.
Oh, no,
we
not
get
at all.
A tiny bit of Kyoshi in season one. Mm-hmm. No Karuk, right? I'm not just.
Yeah.
There's no way that he is even mentioned before that. I don't think. Like they might have dropped his name, but I am pretty confident that he's just not even mentioned until like way later.
Because he's with Ko.
Okay, yeah.
But just that episode in season 2. We're now losing the plot, but regardless.
Yeah. Anyway, so what did you think about how they kind of used the past avatars for Aang's arc in this?
I hated it. Why were they so angry? I'm just going to come straight out with it. Why were they so angry? They're yelling. Kyoshi is yelling. Or not Kyoshi, Yang Chen is yelling at him. And she's an air nomad. They're telling him to be violent, go do all these things. When in the original series, what made them so great, they're these wise avatars.
They're sages at that point.
They're sages at that point, essentially. Yeah. And they're able to speak in a calm, collective way and tell him what he needs to do, in a serious matter. But they were like, you gotta kill him. Or whatever. But in the original, they're like, Aang, you have to make hard choices eventually.
Yeah, they leave it a lot more up to him in the animated series.
Yeah.
Like, we can't help you that much. We just gotta kind of nudge you along. And in this, they're like, hey, we're gonna yell at you and tell you what to do.
We're gonna yell at you.
A choice. The Kyoshi of it all really hurts me a lot because on the one hand, it was like if I just look at the 2 minutes of Kiyoshi just absolutely ripping through people.
It was
like
sick. That's
so cool to see. Like, come on.
Great.
I love that collectively everyone has kind of decided and accepted that Kiyoshi is just so awesome. And so it's cool to see Kiyoshi doing more stuff. And I like that they want to introduce her more and like have her be in a more prominent role. But at the same time, they flatten her character a little bit to turn her into the like super just like, no, you have to be ruthless and a warrior first and foremost, which granted that is a really, really big part of her character and her character arc for when she is the Avatar. Like her journey is about her realizing that she does have to make the hard choices, and she's like, someone's going to have to do stuff that's not great. It'll be me because it's my responsibility as the Avatar. And that's cool, but there's more nuance to her than what the show displays. I feel like they flatten her in order to make it more of an obvious contrast for what Aang needs to be and should be. And then also by having her come in and just wreck shop, you lose a lot of Aang's agency as well, because it like you didn't have to do anything there to get out of the problem. Kiyoshi did it. Like she literally just took over and solved the issue that he had. And
I don't think, does he solve any issues? Because then he's taken over as, doesn't Roku come out at one point? No, Roku doesn't come out, but.
No, he doesn't come out. He also, is Roku also, it's been a minute since I watched the show. Is Roku that goofy whenever we see him in the animated series? Because I did not think that he was. That was
there's like a little bit.
Yeah.
That one, I was like, huh?
It was super jarring that he like, I feel like that's more of an air nomad type like personality to have, that kind of like lighthearted, you know, poking fun, like jest that you have with people.
Like a Monkiatsu.
Yeah, exactly. Which I thought he was good. He was cool.
Right. Yeah. He was adorable.
Even though him and Aang totally ripped a line from Man of Steel in the pilot, but it's fine.
Oh yeah.
it's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, but it's just one, like Roku being that goofy whenever he first went to him, I was like, oh, that was kind of jarring for me to see. And I didn't really get I feel like they just in general flattened the other, like they took a lot of the nuance away from the other avatars to make them more one note, to make the contrast or the like what they're trying to tell Aang that he needs to do more obvious, and you lose their characters by doing that. And
like they all became the same person basically.
Which is,
I was like, don't they have personalities? Huh?
Yeah, which is ironic because the show also literally says that. Like Roku's like, no, we all are different from each other. It's like, well, you don't really feel different from each other.
You don't feel different.
Yeah. And Karuk was also way too old. That's a nitpick on my end, but he's supposed to be like in his 20s and super irresponsible. And in this, they made it to where
he's like the fun-loving, cool avatar.
Yeah, like he's literally just supposed to like surfing. His stereotype is that he's like the dude who like got too much responsibility and partied in his 20s and like and then died young. Like that was his thing. And in this, they're like, oh no, he actually was super responsible and dedicated his entire life to like battling in the spirit world and stuff. And it's like,
what's that meme where it's like he should have been at the clubs?
Yeah, I mean that is him. That's his personality to a T. And instead in this, they're like, no, he was super valiant and actually spent his whole life fighting. And it's like, that's not really him.
I was like, what are we trying to say here?
Because like it's supposed to be in the larger scheme of things that like him being that irresponsible is a big reason that we're able to get to eventually like Roku and Sozin like royally messing things up, right? Because from Karuk on, like the avatars are trying to get things back under control because he was super irresponsible as an avatar. And I don't know how they're gonna kind of rectify that now
or show that.
Yeah,
or I guess we're just we need more space for more monologues. We need more talking in this show.
Yeah, which is it's I don't know. It's okay. There's just a lot there, and I don't know. We'll see how they end up like kind of going and making those changes as they go forward. But you know, it's fun. We've been talking about a lot of the stuff for the season overall, but you know, up next, Kate and I are going to be diving into the season 1 finale and really get into how we think the series will be adapted further heading into season 2. So we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. The season finale of the live action series has consumed the discussion online as it deviates pretty far from the source material, especially in comparison to some of the earlier episodes in the season. Kate, I want to start with you again and hear about some of your thoughts on the finale specifically.
Momo dies?
Yeah, hey, his heart doesn't completely stop. He said Ahsoka says a lot. He's barely alive, which I don't really know how Ahsoka's able to deal with, like, to discern that by, like, sure.
That whole scene, I was dying. It's like it was so funny.
We just had to crush Momo real quick.
We just had I had a laugh about that. He like just pops in and saves the kid, and I was like, what? And then he gets crushed by the rock. And then I guess that they use that to get them to the spirit center. What's that called? The lake.
The garden.
The little pond, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They that literally, it's only so that they can bring him.
It's only so
because we need to be in there for the final stuff that's going on. Which was a choice. That was the weirdest like fake out thing. I feel like death fake outs in shows and movies are always like pretty well like charted. Like you can kind of tell a lot of the time whenever someone dies, but they're not going to be dead. Obviously,
Momo.
Like, come on, they're not going to kill Momo. Like, whatever.
I had to pause the episode and it was like 3 a.m. and I was just cracking up. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, that was hilarious. You know, I was entertained. I was entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else. The monster was really cool. It was like Koizilla. A Godzilla movie. Yeah. Koizilla.
Yeah, the showrunner Albert Kimler, I was reading an interview with him where he was talking about a reason that they didn't do a lot of the things in season 1, like from the animated series into this, is because they knew they wanted to do Koizilla, so they knew that was going to be a big part of their budget. And so that's why they didn't do a lot of the other stuff, which, okay, but also you had a bigger budget than Game of Thrones, so let's not act like you didn't.
You didn't do that.
But like, I understand. I like that they at least did. They were like, we're doing Koizilla, which is cool. Like, he looked pretty epic. I can't lie. Like,
it looked pretty awesome, and I love the trebuchets throwing the. I don't know. I love trebuchets. I think that.
Big
battles are
That's
cool. Sick. Big battles are sick.
Like I as much as I like wasn't that big of a fan of the finale, like it's kind of hard to not be like, oh, big battles.
To be like, this is awesome.
like stuff go boom.
That was my that was my monkey brain. I was like, it's exploding. Cool.
Yeah, like, oh, big fire. Yeah.
That was the spoon-fed stupid person they were feeding in my brain.
Yeah, which we'll take it, I suppose.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But a lot of things. Yue, great. Love her. Oh, she's my God.
Wish they would have lit her better. Amber Mid-Thunder. She's amazing.
And get her a better lace front. My God. Those wigs were the wigs and all of it. Grand needs a new wig. Everybody needs a new wig.
It's crazy because the costume and makeup a lot of the time was like phenomenal. It was really, really well done, like really 99% of the time. But that 1% was pretty glaring. People were making, I saw people talking about the M. Night Shyamalan wigs and how good they looked, actually. I haven't seen those, so no frame of reference.
Good for you.
Thanks. I'm still just trying to. Maybe we'll do that as a bonus episode at some point.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
Said that on air, so now we're committed. It's fine.
We're committed. It's out in the air.
Yeah. No, I think the costumes looked great for the most part, though.
Costumes look
for the most part, like
really solid. And I loved that they were colorful. And I had a friend post, they talked about how they were like, it doesn't look like these are worn. Like they're actually characters that wear these. They're not dirty. They're very clean. Which I agreed with. I got that.
I think
but also I think it worked in this.
And doesn't work partially. Yes. Like, I think there's a really fine line there between like keeping it clean because you wear it all the time, and also this is a costume that just came off the movie set that we're like not wearing.
Yeah. We're just
so wearing. It's like, they looked great though. I did like them a lot. But Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What else did you like? Did you like anything else in the finale? Let's get that out of the way.
Anything else in the finale? Let's see.
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, Yue is great. She's cool. I did love the lion turtle reference whenever, because like Zhao gets the whole, well, we got another random flashback to give us context for the thing that, for the like Deus Ex Machina that they need to introduce in the end of the episode. And so we get that like 45-second flashback or whatever of Zhao like researching lore essentially for the show, right? And he's like, all that's in here is just like lion turtle nonsense, which like I ate that up as a like Korra diehard, and like I was like, oh yeah, like I love that. So that was really cool. I did enjoy the Zuko and Katara 1v1. I thought that was pretty sick to see.
That
like that was dope. She whooped him, and it was cool.
I love when she beats his ass. But like unfortunately, I'd like that they do that on the Spirit Pond. The little what's the name of that? Whatever. They do that fight there, and then that's when the Oasis.
No, it's great.
It's great. They do that fight there, which I love. So I don't know why. I was a bit confused on why they had Zuko and Katara away from that and not skipping out on Zuko kidnapping Aang.
Yeah.
That was an interesting part. I thought I did love Zhao and Iroh. That was kept in the original, like, because Iroh is he becomes essentially like a protector of spirits. Like that's what he becomes later in his life. And I like that they kept that in.
I like the 1v1. That was cool. I liked them. Yeah, that was a great fight. I liked the Master Katara line. Like that was a cool moment. And like her being like, I'm not, which is obviously she's not yet, but like that that interaction, I did like Katara and her like standing up to the way that they've been doing things in the Northern Water Tribe, and her being like, no, like we can do stuff obviously, and like them learning from that, like that's good. And so like seeing that was cool, and like all of the younger waterbenders being like, hey, we need help, like we haven't been in a battle before, so like any advice would be nice. Like those are good moments, you know. And that's pretty that's pretty much it that I like really liked from it. The rest of my stuff is kind of like, I don't really understand. I have one thing that I noticed about like halfway through the finale, and it's something that I should have noticed like beforehand because they got to the Northern Water Tribe before that. Why is none of their breath visible?
Oh my God.
Not a single. I mean, like I know why, because that's a lot of effort for, you know, like because they shot on a soundstage. That's a lot of and like that's a lot of CGI.
It's all in front of a green screen,
But like as soon as I noticed it, I was like, oh no, I can't unthink this. I didn't think about that at all. They're supposed to be at the North Pole, and there's no breath from any of them, which, you know, sure.
I wonder if that's in the M. Night Shyamalan version. I got to be honest. I got to go.
It's a small thing. Like
that's an interesting detail. Yeah.
Like it's not a huge deal. It's not the end of
that. If they're going for this hyper realism, they should have that in. That's
Like I was like, oh, like as soon as I saw that, and it was like the glass shattering in my brain, I was like, oh no.
You're like, oh, there is my suspension of disbelief, and goodbye.
I was like, oh no, that's not cool. I also did not really like the hand, like I literally called it like a handoff type thing in my notes between I'm blanking on his name, is Han, correct? Between like Han and Sokka and Yue, Han being like, oh, it's cool if you date her now, like type thing.
The handoff. I was like, oh,
we don't need to be doing that. Like,
one step forward, 3 steps back.
I'm like, we're in 2024 now. It's fine. Like she's a person.
She's not an object.
She has agency, but sure. Like we'll go for it. So like that I didn't really love. And then can we talk about the lighting that they used for
I know you didn't like that I said this, but it looked like the movie 300.
Okay, that's no. I mean, like,
sorry.
I get it. It looked like the. I don't want to.
You know what I mean?
It looked like it was. I know. I get it, because it does kind of have that feel, but it's just not executed well. I don't think. Yeah. Like it was just
like that works for the movie 300, but
like it was a super harsh, and I get the vibe they're going for, and like it works for like distinguishing that, like, obviously they're operating in a world that has significantly changed because, you know, the moon's gone now. And so like it's a really like quick shorthand signifier, but it did not look good.
The red filter,
super harsh red light that just like, why did we have to do that? Like, I get it.
So lean into shadows, lean into shading. If you have a monochrome palette, you really rely heavily on your shades, and that's how you paint monochrome. That's why it worked so well in animation, because they focused on, you know, making it like something I know that they do in black and white is they'll put green lipstick on instead of red because it looks better on camera.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the whole thing. Deep cut for WandaVision stuff. The entire reason, like, they had
he's blue, isn't he?
Yeah, they had super bright blue stuff for like all of the sets because that's how it picks up when you're filming in black and white, you know. And so, I would be really curious to see the behind the scenes for how they did all of those sequences, because I feel like they maybe didn't. I don't think
they changed anything.
Yeah, it feels like
they just put the red filter on without thinking.
Yeah, or like maybe they had the lights on set be that super. I don't know, but it just didn't translate well. I don't think it was just super jarring to me. I will say, actually, this is a point in things that I did like. I thought Zhao was him being so over the top and I'm gonna rule the world was pretty rad. I can't lie. I was like, I like this dude just being the most cartoon villain ever. Like, just immediately, like, he went from being like, I need to impress Ozai and move up the ranks to I'm gonna destroy the moon.
I'm gonna destroy the moon.
World. Like, that was like,
okay, dude.
I
God forbid girls have hobbies.
I respect the hustle, I guess. It's sure, man. Like, that's fine. Yeah,
but he kind of lost it at the end. Okay, his death. Iroh just kills him.
Yeah, and it's also, that cut was weird.
That was weird.
Where it happened, it just happened, and I was like, oh, okay. It
just happened. I was like, but he falls into water, so he could have been okay.
Yeah. We didn't see no body.
No body. There was no body.
He could show up again, maybe. I feel like probably not, though, because I feel like they did kind of lean into like making him the obviously overarching villain of the season.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty smart, actually, as far as if you're going to have a season villain, because you can't have it be Ozai, obviously.
Yeah.
And you have the problem with the fact that like Ozai is very present throughout the entire season, which he's not in the animated series.
He just kind of, doesn't he have a country to rule? He's just sitting in a room the whole time. I swear, every time I see him in a room or he's outside just watching Azula, he's so present in Azula's life, which I find odd, because I'm like, a big reason that these kids are so traumatized and they're striving for their father's affection. They're just striving for his attention. Even he's never around. He never even gives them. He's barely gives them attention. And in this, I was like, oh, does he just hang with Azula all day? Like, what does he do?
Like that, actually. Yeah. Now that you mention it, he's like, especially if you take into account her like introduction, she had to have like run her plan by him, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, and so like they're just like, I picture them just like kicking back in one of the rooms, and he's like, oh, so like, what are you up to? Like this.
He's like, what's our evil plan today, daughter?
Yeah. Which is a choice. I think it's tough because I think on the one hand, it is smart to show the fact that he is obviously just pitting them against each other. But then you have what you mentioned earlier, the over explanation of Zhao's last 30 seconds, just being like, hey, Zuko, by the way, here's the entire season arc that you and Azula.
Here's everything that you learned.
And here's
spat right back at you.
And here's the insert cuts to show the audience too, in case they forgot in the last.
In case they forgot. Yeah.
Which that's a choice. It's fine. It happened.
Fine.
I think the battle was cool. A lot of the character stuff around it, though, I just did not get. Also, Yue uses waterbending when there's not supposed to be waterbending.
Yes! Yes!
Which I did not notice at first, but our awesome producer Sean pointed it out when we were.
Thank you, Sean. Because that's insane.
The fact that I didn't notice that whenever I was watching, I can't believe. But yeah, she like uses waterbending to freeze Sokka in place so she can go restore waterbending to the world. Sure, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
maybe she has, I guess you could explain that she has special powers because she like
is the moon.
Yeah, is water bending incarnate partially, I guess. Like, sure.
The line gets really sloppy there.
Yeah.
Very.
I feel like that's a consistent thing where they kind of, it's such a weird dichotomy where they will over explain, but then also leave other things very blurry and not explained. And it's just big question marks.
It's frustrating. It's sad because I want it to be good. Avatar, I want you to be good. I want to like you. I want you to do a good job. I'm here with you. I'll forgive you for your mistakes. But God, you make it so hard.
It's just the inconsistency just hurts. It
just hurts.
Yeah, I don't know. The finale was a mixed bag for sure.
It was a mixed bag.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of the finale, they had a weird post-credit scene thing where it ends, and they had
also that was again the Marvelification of movies. That I was like, of course we have a post-credit scene.
So it ends essentially, right? And then we get the Azula, like before the title card pops up, we get Azula and she's Kakeru no Mashu, which is obviously teased for season 2. And then it ends and it felt like a solid ending.
I was like, okay, cool.
And then it flashes the title card and then we get no credits and it cuts to another scene, which was a choice. And
before it ended, I said, watch there be a post-credit scene. And then I was like,
and then 2 seconds later, you got one.
I got one.
Yeah, and so we get Ozai learning about Sozin's comet is coming back around, obviously, because it's been 100 years. And so we get that and the tease for, what will lead into season 2. So what are you anticipating from this season 2? Where do you think they're going to go? Do you think they're going to like bring things that we didn't see in season 1 into season 2? Do you think they're going to bring a bunch of stuff from season 3 into season 2? It's
everything's in season 2 now.
Because season 2 is we spent a lot of time in the desert and I don't really know how they're going to, do all that then bossing say and stuff. So like, what is your, I guess, thoughts on where we're going?
I did like what our producer Sean mentioned that we saw the owl early on, and we saw that clock in the Fire Nation, the celestial clock. He brought up that we probably won't get the library scene, which is unfortunate because that's one of the best and most memorable scenes. Best episodes ever. Like I remember vividly seeing that for the first time as a kid. That and the swamp episode I remember. But I like that you brought up they might not do that and they might find that information out in another way by being in the Fire Nation and finding that celestial clock instead of the one in the Library of Alexandria.
Essentially.
And essentially that's what that is. Because we already met the owl. The owl is
which I'm mad about. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm mad that he showed up early because he's not supposed to be into the library in season 2.
I was like, what are you doing? And then the fox came out and I was like, the knowledge seekers?
Yeah.
I love the little foxes. But then that was UA, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever.
Which also was weird.
Season 2 speculation. I do think they're going to forgo a lot. I really hope they do a lot with Zuko. I love the episode Zuko alone is so important, but I have a feeling they're just going to forget that. I have a feeling there's no way they're getting that one.
I mean, like, I just can't see them doing it with the way that they've decided to
go with everything else.
Yeah, the way that they decide to like pick and condense and cut and, the things that I just can't. It's just because they are hour episodes as opposed to 20-minute episodes. Like you can do a 20-minute episode that's just Zuko and it's not, that like you could do that and it works. You obviously can't do a 40-minute episode that's just Zuko alone. Then it's also
I'd watch it.
I mean, yeah, but it's also weird to just do like 20 minutes of an hour episode that's just that same thing.
Yeah.
So like, we'll probably lose that, which sucks. That's great.
If we do get it in though, I'll throw a little party. I'll be happy.
That'd be cool.
I'll give them that one.
How do you think they're going to handle Toph? I mean, she has to show up.
It's going to be The Rock. It's going to be Dwayne. It's going to be just Dwayne Johnson.
It would be cool if they can actually get him to play the character
in the Ember Island Players.
Yeah, that would be.
I hope they do that.
But if they can get him to be the Boulder, I would lose it.
That would
awesome.
be so good.
That's what he's
the Boulder. That's right. Yeah.
He's just the caricature. That would be cool. Yeah. I mean, it's weird because I feel like we can't spend as much time in the desert as they do in the animated series, because they spend a lot of time there.
And like we have Appa and
like we have to get. There's no way they can. I say there's no way they can't do Appa getting taken, but also Appa was barely in this season, which I get. He's very expensive to do in live action.
That's a very expensive, yeah.
He's a big boy. Like, I get it. And so
he was very cute. I loved
adorable.
The design was adorable. Momo scared me. That thing was creepy.
See, we're on different sides on that. I want one. I want a Momo.
Thing's gonna eat my hair.
So I feel like you can't not do Appa alone, but also they might not do Appa alone. If they do Appa alone, I feel like they won't focus on the Appa side of it. I feel like they would do it so they don't have to show Appa for
Appa at all.
Yeah, because it's like, oh,
how do we do Appa alone without Appa?
Yeah, like you'll still get the Aang part of Appa alone where he's trying to find them, because like that's so important for his growth.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like that's not going to hit as hard because we haven't gotten like a ton of time with Team Avatar and Appa. He just is
how much
literally
he means to them.
He's just a vehicle for them, which is,
that's not like that's Aang's only companion left over from his past from 100 years ago.
Yeah, which that'll be interesting. So I don't know. I think maybe though, because they did not do the deserter episode in season 1, which is a pretty big deal for Aang and his like character growth and stuff, and his bending arcs.
Yeah, has he been any other element?
Not that we've seen
at all,
no, unless you count whenever he's like Koizilla
in the Avatar state.
Yeah, which I mean,
Koizilla.
Not really.
Doesn't
he
really
hasn't. Like I said earlier, 5 minutes left in the finale. He's like, I need to learn waterbending. It's like, yeah, dude, that's the whole point of this season. Actually, it's supposed to be you learning waterbending.
That was
sure, the goal. I guess. Yeah. So I mean, maybe they'll find a way to wrap that back into season 2 and get some exploration there. If I had to guess, I would say we'll spend most of the season, like we'll get Desert, Omashu, and then Ba Sing Se will be a bigger chunk.
I wonder if they'll do There Is No War in Ba Sing Se.
They have to.
Like,
there's like, that's so pivotal to the culture of Ba Sing Se. It feels weird to call it but I mean, it is though, like the whole, that's how the city functions still. And so,
yeah, and they hint at that we didn't even talk about the beginning, whatever.
Oh yeah, the very beginning part.
The very first 10 minutes of the first episode.
That one pretty hard.
That one pretty hard. Cool. That worked. I was like, damn, this is awesome.
I think part of that is also because CG looks way better at night than it does in all the earth and the fire. I was like, oh, this looks real good. Like, this is crisp. This is how we can't see a lot of the details, which like is good. Yeah, that was, so I don't know. If I had to guess, that's what they'll do for most of season 2, but I don't know. That'll be interesting.
I wonder if Jet will come back. I really hope they have Jet. Well, also I hope they have Jet come back, because
yeah, I mean, I feel like
my TikTok is literally just edits of him.
I mean, we'll get we didn't even talk about Suki. We
didn't even talk about Suki. Oh my God.
Suki was so good. So more of her in season 2 for sure.
More of her in season 2, because she joins the gang eventually.
Yeah. I thought that was a plus for the season as a whole. Her and Sokka, that
worked out. I did like that. I didn't mind that he wasn't like outwardly sexist, but he still kind of had that.
He was like a little judgy about it, and like,
yeah, he was still trying to be like impress her and everything and play up how cool he was. I love that.
I really loved the moment when he feels insecure and walks away after the training thing, and then like not knowing how to flirt. Essentially, like her flirting is like, I'm gonna fight you, and he's like, you just embarrassed the hell out of me, woman. Like, I can't deal with this.
I love her. That's me.
Like, that was good. I thought that like they had great chemistry, and Suki was amazing. So more of her in season 2 for sure.
Yeah.
We need. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how they divide the time up with season 2, because I have to assume that they'll do what they did with this one, where like it'll probably end up being slightly longer in runtime than what season 1 was, and so it'll be something to see how they.
It will be something to see.
We probably have. I would guess
that's the quote.
I would guess like 2026 is when we'll get that. So that'll be exciting. We'll be done covering the whole regular animated series.
The whole regular animated series. And Korra, hopefully.
Korra probably too, yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. So that'll be fun. I can't wait to get to Korra. That'd be cool. That's way down the line.
Yeah,
we got like 60 episodes to get through.
We got a lot to get through first.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Good stuff.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Any last minute comments?
I don't think so. I think we hit most of the points. I'm sure I'll think of stuff as soon as we're done, but that's the nature of podcasting, folks.
That's the nature of podcasting. Last thing I want to say is Sebastian Amoruso, hit my line. That's all I want.
You're free Saturday. I'm free Saturday.
I'm free Saturday. You're free Saturday. That's all. Anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 1 of Bending the Narrative. All right, next week, we're diving back into where it all began, and we are discussing the 2-part pilot for the series, The Boy in the Iceberg and The Avatar Returns. I'm so excited to rewatch the series after watching this. Yeah. I need the palate cleanser.
Oh, so much.
Yeah. Before we go, Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at APBatman with 2 T's. Whatever socials exist, you can find me at that ad on them. Love that. Super cool. You can find me online at Kate the Official on Instagram. I don't use many other socials. Please be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect on YouTube or any platform where podcasts are found. Please give us a like, leave a comment, turn on that bell for notifications, and you can follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, TikTok, and any other social media site at The Aspect Co. Thank you guys for listening. Blame me, oh hot man.